Good afternoon, America. I'm Eric Erickson. Thanks for tuning in to the 4 things you need to know this afternoon. Let's get right to it. Up first, the State Department overhauls policy on foreign elections. Today, there's a big change out of Washington. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has issued a directive telling State Department employees to stop commenting publicly on foreign elections unless there's a clear and compelling U.S. foreign policy interest. The new rule comes as part of President Trump's emphasis on national sovereignty and America first. It's a major pivot from the approach we've seen in recent decades from bipartisan administrations. Here's what the new memo says. U.S. officials are now directed to avoid weighing in on the fairness or integrity of elections overseas and should focus only on congratulating the winner and, when appropriate, noting shared foreign policy interests. Essentially, U.S. embassies around the world are told not to pass judgment on the legitimacy of someone else's election unless there's a direct, compelling interest for America. Rubio and Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Lando defend the move as common sense clarity that keeps America out of other countries' domestic politics and avoids hypocrisy. Given our own complicated election history, they argue that the end of the era of nation building and meddling has backfired, often causing more harm than good, and we should rethink things. Critics, including some former career diplomats and human rights groups, warn that this leaves pro-democracy movements out in the cold and may weaken U.S. influence as a voice of liberty. Nicole Wittersheim of Human Rights Watch says this approach could leave the U.S., quote, in the dark on the nature of the leadership we're dealing with and fail to shine a light on unfair or dangerous regimes. This is about realism, though national interest and humility. We can support our values but not be reflexively telling others how to run their elections or government, especially when our own record is hardly spotless. This doesn't mean we stay silent in the face of real atrocities or rigged elections, but it does mean we pick our fights carefully based on what actually serves the American people. The second story is a striking illustration of how warfare and alliances are changing quickly. President Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky are in talks over what both are calling a mega deal. The United States would buy battlefield-tested Ukrainian military drones, while Ukraine would in turn purchase American weapons. Ukraine's drone technology has gotten a lot of attention lately. These are not toys. These are combat-proven unmanned aerial vehicles that have hit targets deep inside Russian territory, including heavy bombers up to 800 miles behind enemy lines. Zelensky says the American people need this technology and you need to have it in your arsenal. He argues it's time for Ukraine to share its expertise from 3 hard years of war. In the proposed deal, the U.S. would purchase advanced drones from Ukraine, aiming to quickly close the gap with China and Russia, who are ahead of us in some areas of drone warfare. Ukraine would use some of the proceeds to buy high-end weaponry and air defense systems from American manufacturers, deepening U.S.-Ukraine military ties. Both sides see it as a win-win. For Trump, it aligns with his push to get America off the hook for endless foreign aid. Europe and NATO will pay for most of Kyiv's weapons, while the U.S. comes out ahead on cutting-edge technology. For Ukraine, it's a chance for it to show its wartime innovations and wrap it into an economic and strategic leverage. Military experts point out that the war in Ukraine has accelerated military innovation, especially in drone and electronic warfare. Nations worldwide are watching, meaning whoever can buy, build, and deploy the best unmanned systems will have a clear advantage in future conflicts. Now, this is smart statecraft, strengthening our own military, helping an ally at war with Russia, and doing it in a way that leverages American and allied interests without writing endless blank checks. Our third story today is a major escalation in the trade war with China, a 93.5% tariff on key battery materials imported from China. It's a targeted move by the Trump administration, part of its broader bid to wall off American industries from Chinese dependency, especially in electric vehicles and advanced battery supply chains. Here's what's happening. The new tariff covers one of the essential new materials used in batteries for electric vehicles and consumer electronics. The imported Chinese material is critical for U.S. automakers and other manufacturers, which have relied on China for years because of lower costs and lack of domestic alternatives. The tariff aims to force companies to source their materials from either U.S. suppliers or friendly partners, or invest directly in homegrown production. The immediate effect: products using these battery components are going to get more expensive. Experts warn this could hit everything from EV prices to laptops and cell phones. Automakers like Volvo, who already struggle with EV development costs and U.S. tariffs, expect even larger losses and job cuts and higher input costs. From the administration's viewpoint, this is about both economic and national security. The White House points out the supply chain risks, especially for batteries, rare minerals, and semiconductors. They give Beijing unwelcome leverage in our economy and military. The tariff surge is designed to break our reliance on China and kickstart American production in these sectors. This is always a balancing act. Tough trade moves can defend American jobs and dignity, but risk higher prices for families and retaliation against other exporters. The question is whether this will build a stronger industrial backbone or simply make things costlier for consumers. Policymakers have got to monitor this closely and ensure American companies step up, not just pass costs along, which is probably what's going to happen at first. Finally, we've got to talk about California and redistricting and the House maps that are aimed at Texas redistricting. It's all become a bit of a drama around the country now. This begins in California and the struggle over redistricting, a warning shot from Gavin Newsom. He's signaling that if Texas Republicans move forward with mid-cycle redistricting to lock in a Republican congressional control, Democrats in blue states, well, they should play by the same rules, and that's escalating matters around the country. Here's the background so you know. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has called a special session for lawmakers to redraw the state's congressional maps in Texas, even though new maps are typically drawn every 10 years, not mid-decade. President Trump claims Republicans could gain up to 5 more House seats with the Texas map redraw. He's encouraging similar moves elsewhere. In response, Gavin Newsom is openly contemplating a retaliatory gerrymander if Democrats in California need to counter Republican tactics. Newsom says two can play this game and insists the state might have to stop playing fair. Currently, California uses an independent redistricting commission that, by the way, they have gamed pretty thoroughly to help them. It was created via ballot initiative. Newsom is suggesting that he could seek new legislation or a ballot measure to let Democrats redraw the lines themselves to offset what he calls unfair Republican power grabs in Texas and other states. Now, this signals a major escalation of the partisan redistricting wars. Practically, changing California's independent process would be tough. It would require changing state law or even a constitutional amendment. But Newsom's public threat has been as a warning sign and a rallying call to Democratic activists in California and nationally. For those of us on the right, it's precisely the slippery slope that results when one side veers from established norms for short-term gain. Everything and everyone else is forced to reconsider the unwritten rules, and the entire redistricting process becomes even more politicized and unpredictable than it already is. The principle here isn't just win at any cost. It's protecting the legitimacy of the political system so that voters, not politicians, pick their leaders. Historically, when parties double down on redistricting to win through mid-year gamesmanship or mid-decade gamesmanship, the law of unintended consequences takes over quickly. This could actually hurt both parties. These are the 4 things you need to know this afternoon. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Just look for 4 things to know this afternoon. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/EWErickson. That actually helps us grow the show a lot. I'd appreciate your help by subscribing to youtube.com/EWErickson. I happen to be him, Eric Erickson. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged. Please keep the faith.